You were talking about, when you end something and you kind of have to figure out that next thing. I'm curious, like, how did all of these experiences eventually lead to Explore Adventure Lab?
Um, so over the years, after doing, so I'd also have traveled extensively. I haven't counted. It's more than 60 countries, not more than 65. It's somewhere in there. But a lot of my trips have been for long periods of time. So I've been to Australia 7 different trips, but if you add all the days up, it's been almost 4 years of my life in Australia. I've been to Europe maybe 20, 25 times. So it's like you spend these large chunks of time. So you really get
Yeah,
to know the ins and outs of different locations and logistics and packing. And you start thinking about things differently. You kind of back yourself up with redundancy. There's a term I was talking about in my bike packing webinar, pack your fears. I was always packing my fears. And that when I say that, so if you're backpacking, you would say, like, oh, bring extra water, bring this, bring that, bring an extra
hmm,
jacket because it's going to be cold. Um, so with the international experience, as well as working abroad, studying abroad, um, as well as when we were younger, we started this Christmas light business. So like, and I have a lot of friends that also had started their own businesses. So I had a lot of support from our amazing group of friends saying like, yeah, you could
yeah,
do it. And my good friend Rob designed this logo for me. He does graphic design and stuff in Australia. He's like, dude, anything I could do to help. And the idea was coaching and consulting. So helping people help themselves, helping people achieve their travel and adventure goals for less. So I'm not
mm,
exactly a travel agent, but we're going to do a 30-minute or a 1 hour consultation. And I'm going to literally talk you through XYZ. There's an amazing couple in San Diego that reached out to me. They're going to Patagonia. Their ideas, well, it all depends with COVID, but I was talking through the logistics because it's really overwhelming with the permits, where to fly into, where to fly out of. Do you take buses? Do you rent a car? Do you stay at
yeah,
hostels? Do you go tent? So we talked about all the pros and cons of things. And people over the years, and it's not just me. I mean, I'm sure Brian, as an avid traveler, has a lot of people reaching out to him. Hey, how did you do this? How did you do that? And I love helping people and I love helping my friends. But after a while, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm spending a lot of time
yeah. You gotta
helping
monetize
others.
that. Yeah,
Exactly. And so, and it's still, yeah, it felt kind of weird, but at the same time, I was like, you know what? It's my time, and I'm trying to do other things. And so I created exploreadventurelab.com. It's, traveling coaching and consultation service. It's a website that allows me to kind of post past trips, current trips.
hmm,
Even this interview right here, it'll be on my website live next Monday, so it's a
hey,
place,
yeah,
yeah, exactly. So it's a place just to share everything going on, for myself. So, at the
got you.
very least, and who knows what it'll evolve into, but at the moment, it's that.
No, I love that, and I wanted you to use that opportunity because you mentioned the consultation, right? So for anybody listening live right now, the questions are going to be up tomorrow night and be up till Saturday. But I kind of want you to kind of sell that. And what would somebody expect to get? One, if you're a winner that gets the 50% off the 30-minute consultation call versus the 20% off for everybody, that's going to last until May 15th. I want to know, what would I expect if I'm reaching out to you for a consultation call about a trip that I want to take?
Okay, so first of all, usually the way it works is like if you go on my site, you could fill out. It's linked with Mailchimp. It's a questionnaire asking all about you, and then we're going to have a 15-minute consult for free before. What do you think, babe? Excuse me.
Hmm.
I would find out kind of what you're looking to do, right? And so the consultation comes down to where we would start out. The biggest thing, I'd be like, all right, Ponyboy, what do you want to what do you want to feel out of your trip? You're like,
Got
let's
you.
say you want to do. I mean, it could be anything. You want to go hiking in your
Hmm.
backyard. I mean, you're in Houston, right? Okay, you're
Yeah.
Eric, or I want to go to Croatia. People want to do these trips. They see stuff on Instagram, and I had this
Yeah.
conversation with my stepmom yesterday. People see stuff, and they're like, "That looks incredible," on the photo, but they don't understand all the work that goes in behind it. So I'm trying
Mm.
to help fill in the gaps and put some realistic ideas, personal experiences from what I had. So what we would do is have a 15-minute consultation that goes for free. And then if we figure that we're a good fit for each other, you're like, you know what, Andy, you sound like you know your stuff. You could probably help
Hmm.
me get around Croatia, and I also want to go to Spain and XYZ. I
Yeah.
mean, any kind of itinerary. let's move forward. And then that's when we had moved forward into a paid platform, either a 30-minute or a 1 hour or some kind of custom package that we had put together. And so it's kind of just each one's unique, you know. And or it's like if you said something like, I want to bike across the United States, I'm like, here's what we're gonna do, you know. And it's gonna take a lot more time than 1 hour.
Yeah. That's the premium package, huh?
Yeah, and that would be more of something like me on retainer. And I'm like, okay, so let's talk about training, planning, gear, logistics, thinking about the realities of it. Like I said, I mean, I think we're all guilty of it. People pop on Instagram, you're flicking through, you know, and you're like, oh, it looks incredible. The person's in Nepal. Yeah. That looks cool. I'm at Everest Base Camp. To get to Everest Base Camp, it's a lot of work. You got to get to Kathmandu. Kathmandu is a big city. It's a different kind of city. Every city is unique in its own ways. It's not good or bad. It's not dirty or whatever. But I absolutely loved it as a traveler because the flavors and the smells and the people were amazing. Nepal's probably one of my favorite countries in the world, but you have to be just really flexible and easy to go with things. Because if you have this idea in your mind, like I'm going to show up and get a photo at Everest Base Camp, it's like, it doesn't work like that. Like you got to get to Kathmandu. Usually people hire a guide. You could get your own permits. It takes a bit of work. Then you got to either hike into Lukla or take a local flight in. And then from there, it's a pretty good hike through multiple spots before you even get to where you're trying to go. And you don't even know if you'll make it because you might be adversely affected by the altitude effect or the altitude sickness or something. So it's one of those things, you kind of set realistic goals for people. So I could say through experience of things that I've done, I could be like, here's the reality. This is how I did it. This is how I went about doing it. I could help you out and go from there. So that would be kind of what my service is. And I'm totally flexible and I want to have fun with it. I want to be your cheerleader. I want to help you out and I want to make you get there. And because there's packages that big companies in the US run. So to go to base camp, I don't know, I haven't looked at the price tag, but I hiked by some people with the REI. They had all the REI porters and the big bags, and you can tell it was an REI group. And REI is great, but if you don't want to spend $5,000, $10,000, or whatever it might be, I could teach you how to do it for less. You know, I could be like, all right, this is how I did it. I did the same trip as those guys, but I did it for a heck of a lot less. I met a guy when I was hiking in Torres del Paine, did the O Trek. I figured out how to do the whole thing for, I don't know, it was something like $400 or $500, maybe even less. Kind of did all my own planning, own campsites, went through all of the, I speak a little Spanish, not as good as Brian's, but it's all, I could hang, you know? And I met another guy, we were kind of trading notes at the end. He's like, I spent $3,000 on this. How did you do this for $300 or whatever it was? I'd have to look at it again. What? And he was just like, wow. But it was also, once again, maybe he didn't have the time to put into it. It took a lot of effort to figure out all the different systems and the different reservations and all that stuff. So
and I'm curious too, because you mentioned that it's most of these, because obviously you travel a lot. But what about your personal bias? If I'm asking you about a place that you and I both haven't been, I guess how would you be of service then? Do you kind of refer them to just resources, or how do you go about that?
So that would be the same thing. So the whole idea is we're doing a whole screen share. We would probably just on Zoom because it's so easy to do screen share, but there's other ways to do it as well. I record the whole thing, and you're talking about places I haven't been. So I've been to, I haven't been to Kenya, but I've been to Tanzania, and they are different culturally, of course, but maybe they're similar in certain ways. And I've gotten visas inside Africa for other locations. So, I mean, if we're using that as a location thing, if somebody wants to hike Kilimanjaro, could be like, look, I haven't done Kilimanjaro, but I've done some other peaks that are equally high. This is how I dealt with it. Here's how the permits work there. So after you've done a few different trips and enough traveling, you can kind of take tricks and tools that you've learned from past trips and put it into effect for other trips.
Exactly.
You're like, this worked well in Argentina. It'll probably work well in Chile, or vice versa. And then at any point, if you're like, Andy, I don't know if this isn't really good info, I'd be like, no worries, no charge, money back. I won't charge. That's it. That's cool. I just want anybody to come in to feel empowered, to feel good, to get where they want to be. Yeah, I just
Yeah,
want people to
I see.
travel and explore and see things, you know?
Yeah, and I like the business model with that 15-minute consultation beforehand because that way.